recently you've had like a wave of clients who are really interested in the new construction homes. And in listening to you, talk to your clients and all of that stuff, there's a difference in the way the transaction goes. And so I see all the time people who they think it's like easier and they don't need an agent because it's new construction home. So I just wanted you to like dive into that and explain the differences and how you absolutely still need a real estate agent.
Definitely. Yeah, so I think to start off, like there has been a wave of new construction, and I think a lot of it has to do with the market, um, because most people either purchased or refinanced when the interest rates were low. They're in the high twos, low threes. A lot of people are not moving, so that has created a shortage of inventory in our market of homes that are for sale. So a lot of what is affordable and what is available is new construction communities. And builders are trying to build as fast as they can. They're obviously still wanting to build a quality product, but they're also running into permitting issues, with the county. They're running into some supply issues. Nothing like it was happening in COVID, but they're not able to build as fast as they would like to build. But they are a good source of homes to purchase because obviously they don't have a seller that's looking at a 2 or 3% interest rate and not wanting to move. So I think that has something to do with the reason that a lot of buyers are looking at new construction homes. Um, it is a little bit different process. I mean, you do still have a seller. That seller is a corporation or a builder, not you know, a person living in the home. So that does make a difference. Their process is a little bit different. You've got a couple different ways that new construction works. You can go in and you can pick your own lot and you can pick your floor plan and you can pick all the upgrades and the colors and everything like that that goes into your home. Um, that can be a 6, 9, or 12-month process depending on the builder and depending on, getting permits and everything like that. Builders are building, what they call spec homes. Um, Basically, a home that they're building for somebody that they know is going to purchase is not a spec home. A spec home is, we're building this in speculation that someone's going to buy it.
Mm.
Um, those usually have a lot of those colors, selections, design options, upgrades. A lot of those are selected ahead of time because sometimes they've got to order kitchen cabinets 6 or 8 weeks in advance.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
once they've already ordered those, you can't change that option of that property. Those can close a lot quicker. Um, and it's a little, yeah, so it's a little shorter time frame from when you find that house to go under contract to close. Um, Most builders have agents that sit on site. Some of them are licensed agents, some of them are actually not licensed agents. Um, but those agents have the builder's best interest in mind, just like a listing agent representing a seller has that seller's best interest in mind.
Yeah, I learned that firsthand. My first house was a new construction home out on Hamilton Mill. And I was 23 and I did not have a real estate agent living in my house. So I just used the lady, she seemed nice enough. I was young and had no clue about anything. And I found out very quickly that that agent, even though she was super nice,
Mhm.
she did not represent me. And there was a lot of things that I just was naive to. And again, like I thought because I signed with her and was working with her that she was like would represent me when there were issues that came up like at final walkthrough and there was this plumbing thing. Anyways, I yeah, so I learned that firsthand that the agents that are there, they're all great people, but
Mhm.
they are not representing you if you're the purchaser. They're representing the builder.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so they're looking out for the builder's best interests. So I definitely think you need an agent as a buyer looking to buy a new construction home. We know the process, we know how it works. Um, for me personally, I have a construction background. My dad was a contractor for 40 years of his life. I worked with him for about 10 or 15 years of my life, through all aspects of the construction process. We had a builder that we worked for where we poured the foundation, framed the house, and dried the house in. So I've seen that stage of the process. We did remodeling, so I've seen them, tearing out and rebuilding. So I know some things to look at or look for in a new construction home. Um, I always highly recommend inspections throughout the building process. If you're starting from scratch, home inspectors will come out and do a framing inspection, um, which I think is a great inspection to have because as soon as they put sheetrock on the walls, you just covered up all potential issues that could
Right.
be there for framing. And I'll say I've had out of the new construction homes where the buyers had an inspection, the inspector always found something that had to be fixed. Now, I've had clients that have chosen not to have inspections, um, and you can see the cosmetic stuff as we're doing the walkthrough. But a home inspector every time has found something that's needed to be
I
fixed.
think that's like a common misconception that because it looks good, like
Hmm.
it's shiny and new, that there's not going to be any problems.
Right,
But still, people who make errors that are building it,
right.
just like even though they're not. I think it's because people think, oh, an older home is going to have issues and a brand new one should have none. Well, that's not true.
Yeah, no, they're human. The people that are building it are human. You do have county inspectors or city inspectors, depending on the municipality or where you're at, that come out and inspect the property. But they're, not experts either.
No.
So they're human and they miss things.
Right. And
Um,
even sometimes I think like the actual like it might not be that they did anything wrong, like the the pipe or it's just like a defective appliance or whatever, it's not always the people, but yeah, stuff happens.
Yeah, stuff happens. So I definitely highly recommend getting a home inspection throughout the process. We actually did a walkthrough recently, and I was just talking to the builder. They walk the houses all the time, and they're always looking for things, that are wrong. They're going back, after their subs go in, and they're making sure that their subcontractors did everything properly. But they will even say, you look at the same thing over and over and over again, it all kind of blurs together and they miss stuff.
Gosh,
Um,
every time I do our newsletter, I learn that I have looked at this for 2 weeks and um I put the in there twice
right.
and didn't notice it. Yeah.
Yeah, you just miss
Happens.
stuff as you look. I mean, I had a builder that was embarrassed when we did the walkthrough. There was a piece of case molding that was broken about a foot before the top of the door. I mean, completely missing. And he said, "Man, I have walked this house 10 times and I didn't even notice that." He was like, "I'm so sorry." And of course, they're going to fix it. They would fix it anyway. But it's just that thing of the, yes, you have county inspectors that are looking through it. You have builders that are looking through it all the time, but they miss stuff,
Mhm.
because of that. So it's great to have a fresh set of eyes come through with the home inspector. And then that's something that, us as agents do too. When we do that initial walkthrough with the builder, it's an orientation of the house. Where's your water cutoff and your spigot cutoffs, and how does the HVAC system work, and where do you change your air filters and those types of things, which are all good information to know. But we're also looking for cosmetic defects in the house. You're looking for blemishes in the sheetrock and the trim, where the caulking is cracked, that the grout is cracked, those things. And it's nice to have that fresh set of eyes come through to find those things. And again, especially having a construction background, I kind of know some different things to look for when we're going through those walkthroughs. Um, so that's a one aspect of having a real estate agent on your side. The other aspect is the negotiation of the contract. In doing new construction properties before, there are certain things that a builder wants to see in their contract. Um, they're selling however many homes in the neighborhood, 20, 30, 50, 100 homes in the neighborhood. They want to keep their sales price up. If they start discounting sales prices in their community, then they've got to start discounting sales prices for all the rest of the homes that they build. Um, but a lot of builders will offer incentives. So they'll keep the sales price where they want the sales price to be, but they'll offer you closing costs, or they'll offer you rate buy downs, or you know other things to think about when you're buying new construction is most builders don't put blinds in house. So then you've got to, spend the money for blinds. They don't do refrigerators. Some of them don't do garage door openers. It really depends on the builder and what their packages are. But, those are things that you can negotiate into the contract. There are things that you don't have to spend money on, and also keeps the builder's price where the builder needs the price to be.
Yeah. Do you think that's like part of the appeal with the new construction? You were talking about the different things that they offer, like obviously the cosmetic, like literally any female, like we would love to sign up to do exactly what we want in the house, like pick these colors, pick this trim, blah blah blah. But I'm talking more about like the incentives? Like, do you think because of what the mortgage rates are doing right now in the market, like they're higher than they have been in a long time, but then you see all these incentives at the new construction neighborhoods? First of all, like, well, yeah, that would be appealing, but like, are they really as good as they sound?
They are. No, so that's a great question, and that is another appeal to new construction is these builders have the options and the ability to offer these incentives that a lot of homeowners may not have the wiggle room to do. Um, some of these builders actually own the mortgage companies that they want you to use,
Mm,
and therefore they can go out and they can buy money in essence, for these lenders to lend at a discounted rate. So they can offer and they can say, okay, you buy this house, we can get your interest rate at 4%, and offer to pay your closing costs to where you're buying this house with just your down payment, and you're getting a 4% interest rate. So that is a great appeal to new construction. You get a brand new house, you know, you get colors and selections and stuff that you want, and you get a 4% interest rate for roughly about the same price that you would pay for a resale home that somebody's already lived in, and have to pay the going interest rate of,
hmm.
6.5%, wherever it happens to be.
Interesting. I always wondered like how they, because if you see like sevens across the board, how are they offering fours? So that I always wondered how that works.
Yeah. I mean, they can do it several different ways, but they can buy down the interest rate, or if they are an owner or have ownership in the mortgage company, then they can go out and they can buy money,
Mm.
at a discounted rate. I know there was a builder not too long ago that basically, they say they bought $10 million at, a 4% interest rate. It's like, okay, you know, we can sell X amount of homes until we've used up that $10,000 in those mortgage funds that we have.
Mhm.
Um, so they kind of had that incentive going. It's like, hey, until this money's gone, you can get a 4% interest rate when you purchase one of our homes.
Yeah. And I've noticed too, like it seems like everybody is like what the last three new construction homes that you've had have all been up in Flowery Branch. So just curious. I mean, I love that area. We've been up there, several times, obviously working with your clients, but like what do you think it is about Flowery Branch that people are flocking to this area?
I think it's what Gwinnett was 10 or 15 years ago. It's I wouldn't even say it's an up and coming area, because it's a well populated, well established
Hmm.
area.
They have a Target.
They have a
I
Target.
mean, you've arrived when you have a Target.
That's right. But I think you have a lot of places that are opening up there. You got a lot of restaurants that are open up there, a lot of shops, a lot of, different places, big department stores and stuff like that that are opening up there. And I think, they've got good school districts.
Hmm.
They've got good access to, interstates, and, getting downtown. Also think there's a lot more people that are working remotely, so they're not as concerned about their commute, not having to go downtown. Um, but I think, I mean, I think you're seeing people that are moving further and further north, and I think Flowery Branch is a good step in that direction where it's a little less populated, but you still have everything that you want and need close by.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that is the appeal. Plus, it's there's not a whole lot of land in Gwinnett to purchase and develop neighborhoods in. Um, if there is land available, it's very expensive.
Mhm.
So it's hard for builders to buy land and build reasonable houses. We've got another one in the Johns Creek area, but it's a, million and a half home because you have one, that area warrants that price, but also when you pay so much for the land,
Mhm.
you've got to build a big house to generate a profit off of it.
Yeah.
You can't pay an astronomical amount of money for the land itself and build a $500,000 house on it.
No, these builders, they have to buy eggs, so they have to make a profit.
That's right. So yeah, so if the more you spend on the land, the bigger the house has to be in order for the builder and the developer to make any money off of it. So
So are there any like tips you have for people who are maybe interested in new construction homes? Like any advice?
I think it's similar to buying a resale. I mean, you've got to figure out what your price point is. Got to figure out what area you want to be in. You've got to figure out what you want in your home. Number of bedrooms, bathrooms, lifestyle. You're looking for a swim and tennis community. Any of those things. You still got to go through that similar process. But then you have to add on. Do you want to pick your lot? Do you want to pick your floor plan? Do you want to pick all your, design options throughout the process? Do you have 6, 9, 12 months to, wait on the builder to build? That was one, I've got one coming up where that was the problem with the buyers. They were actually under contract to buy a new construction home from scratch, and they put their house on the market and their house sold in,
Mm,
a week, and they needed a place to go. So they ended up switching from that new construction home and community to one that was completed so that they could close in 30 days.
yeah, the
Um,
timeline. I feel like that's like so important. Some people don't realize because, yeah, if you want to have like full creative, or not full, because I mean, the structure's already there, but like the cosmetic side of it, like if you want to upgrade and add on, a garage or do any of those things, it like extends the timeline. Like, yeah, you need to have a plan for where you're living
right,
while that's happening. And I know those are some things I did not consider. I would also tell people that are, prone to getting excited about shiny new things, that you need to have a budget for your upgrades because obviously, I mean, it's their job. Like they're trying to sell you everything, and if you're a person like myself, I want it all. Like I want
right.
all the things. Then you have to like have a budget and also like reel in like what do you really need from this house, or you'll just be house poor in your fancy new construction
Yeah,
with the granite countertops.
yeah. And that's something that to think about too is, usually what builders do is they have selection options and they have, I guess, quality of materials would probably be the best way to describe it. So it's like, okay, within this tier, here are the three color options that you have. If you want the next grade up, that's an upgrade, and here are your options for that. And they have, usually have a couple different tiers of, tile, um, for floors, backsplashes, how you want your shower. Do you want a fiberglass pan in the bottom and then a tile walls, or do you want a tile pan in the bottom with tile walls? Different styles of shower doors, different styles of granite. All of those things are options that they have, and they usually fall within tiers of quality and color.
I
So
want
yeah,
top shelf everything.
of course everybody does, but then that's where your budget comes in, and you're like, okay, look, we have the budget to purchase this home plus add, 30, 40, $50,000 worth of upgrades, whatever it may be. And then you've got to make those hard choices on, okay, well, maybe I go with a lower, quality tile in the bathroom to get a higher quality granite in the kitchen, or, so those are
Which
definitely things to think about.
that part I think is similar to resale because, like, I mean, we've talked about our house before. Like, I mean, we I wanted to get the whole thing. We have not done that, but there are things where it's like, I mean, when we redid the girls' bathroom, we were like, okay, we really need to retile this floor, because we took out that wall that was like, I don't know, the toilet closet, whatever it's called. And so like the floor was necessary, but the shower itself, like the shower tub combo itself, was fine. So, would we have liked to have a brand new shower in there? Yes, but at the time, like, our budget allowed for the floors, you know?
Right.
So, it's similar in that, like, yeah, budget is very important. Like, realistic expectations on what you need and want.
Right.
Yeah, the difference.
Yeah. I think it's nice too, though, if you're buying in a community, they've got those selections for you. I mean, you've got to stay within in their realm of what they can do. So I think that helps with being able to do that. But you can go crazy. I mean, you go top tier and everything, and you may add 20 or 30%, sometimes even 40% more to the house than where it started.
Yeah.
So you definitely have to be careful and have that budget, and stick with it. Make sure that you fall within that, because you can easily get out of that really quick.
My 23-year-old self added on 30 grand to the house price in upgrades and I absolutely did not need.
I mean, that was probably 10 or 15% of the value of the house too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
I
sure.
mean, 20 years ago, that was,
Mhm. More than 20.
it's probably a $200,000 home that you bought that you added $20,000 worth of upgrades to.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it can add up really quick.
It did.
Yeah. You add 10% to a $500,000 house today, and you just added $50,000 worth of upgrades to it. So,
That's wild.
yeah,
You with your numbers.
that's
It's
right.
always shocking because that's not how my brain works. I'm like, what?
But going back to the time frame too, like it is in a community that a builder is building, you're not buying the lot and then paying, as the construction goes along. You're only purchasing a home once it's completed.
Mm,
So it's not like you have to sell your house, go under contract to purchase a new construction, then find a place to live for 6 to 9 months while they're building your house. So I do feel like that's a great benefit to that, as opposed to if you went out and bought land and had a house built, you've got to purchase the land and fund the purchase, or the materials and the cost to
mm,
build the property. Now, if you can qualify for both mortgages, that's great. But if not, you're selling your current home, buying land, getting a loan for the construction of the home, and then you've got to, have a place to live while that process is going on. So that is nice about new construction, that you're not closing until they're complete with the house. So you
yeah.
can time the market to where when you list your house, it's sold, and you can take that money to purchase your new home that's complete that you can move right into.
Now, this part I don't remember, so I'm asking, when you go under contract on a regular home like out in the market, like you put down earnest money, right? Do you do that with a new construction home also?
You do, yeah. They still require earnest money on a
Okay.
new construction home. And then talking about that, if you add upgrades to the property, sometimes they require 25 or 50% of that upgrade up front.
Oh, okay.
Um, Usually it's not on standard upgrades. Like if you said, okay, I want this nicer granite over the base granite. But if you're making structural changes, you're, widening door frames, or, you're doing anything, adding a patio on the back, they're going to want that deposit up front, because they've done their research and they've figured out what most people want in their house, in that area, in that community. And those are the houses that they're building that they know that they can sell.
Mhm.
If you start modifying that in any way, they need that money up front in case you back out,
Mm.
that they can remodify that house back to what they know is going to sell in that area. So that's another thing to think about too, is yeah, you not only have your earnest money, but sometimes you have your design upgrade costs as well that have to be paid up front when you make those changes.
That's interesting because I would have just assumed that all of that cost got rolled into obviously it did 20 years ago or whenever I bought my first house because I definitely wasn't putting down any deposits on my extras. I wouldn't have been able to do it. But that's interesting that, yeah, now, which is smart because I'm
Sure.
sure they've had um, some people who, are like, I want this, I want that. And then, like, oh, actually, I changed my mind. And now
Right.
they're stuck with this, very,
Custom home is
very custom
what you've
home.
created, and that's not what they're in the business of doing, especially when they're building these big neighborhoods. They're in the business of building specific floor plans in specific ways with specific design options, and that's when you get charged, is when you start modifying that and making it more of a custom home.
Hmm.
Then it becomes harder for them to sell. They're worried about appraisals at that point, because sometimes you can, add too many upgrades or too many modifications to a house, and you've overpriced your house for that neighborhood.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Yeah.
and then,
I didn't think
then
of that.
they've got, if you don't buy it, they've got to worry about selling it with $30,000, $50,000 worth of extra stuff in there that they may not get their money back out of. So that's why they require those non-refundable upgrade deposits, so that they protect themselves.
So I have a question about the process. So if you're buying a new construction home that's not complete, like how involved are you in the process? How often are you like talking to the builder or like going out and checking on the house? Like what does that look like on your end?
That's a good question too, because there are a lot of factors that the builder can't control. They can't control the weather. So if you're, before you get your house dried in, it's susceptible to the weather. If it
Okay,
rains
wait.
for a week,
When you say dried in,
okay,
tell the normal people what that means because I don't know what that means.
dried in means that the inside of the house would be dry in essence. So you've got your foundation, it's framed, it's got the roof on it,
Okay.
and then then they're starting to put windows in, and then siding on it. Now that comes a little bit later, but basically where the inside of the house is not getting wet anymore.
Okay. Thank you for all the non-construction people listening.
Yes. Um, so during that initial process, the builder can't control the weather. If it rains for a week, that delays their process for a week.
Mm-hmm.
Their guys they're not going to go out there in the rain and pour your foundation, or they're not going to, you don't want your foundation poured on muddy soil. It's not a firm, base to pour a foundation on. So, it's not like it rains for a week and then the next day they're pouring your foundation. They've got to wait for that dirt to dry out so that it's got a firm, support for the foundation. Then yeah, your framers are not out there framing in the rain. Neither are your roofers. So that can delay the process of building a home. So typically, if you buy dirt a lot and have a house built, they will give you a 2 to 3 month time frame of when you're going to close. They would say, okay, we're going to have a June, July closing, and you're just kind of like, okay. And now as they get, once they get it dried in, that process is a little more controllable because they're not as susceptible to the weather. Sheetrockers can work in the rain, cabinet people can work in the rain,
Mm-hmm.
plumbers, that type. Um, but they're also susceptible to, getting supplies. Again, we talked about how a lot of times they have to order cabinets 6 or 8 weeks in advance. And if the cabinet guy gets backed up, then that delays the process.
Mm-hmm.
So we're involved a lot in the timing with the builder, especially if you have a home to sell. We want to time that right to where we list your house so that we're closing at the same time. So one of two things doesn't happen. We don't put it on the market too late, and then your new construction home is ready to close, but your house you're trying to sell is not. And then we also don't want to put it on the market too early to where your current home sells and you've got to find temporary housing before your new construction is ready. So that's a lot of what our interaction is with the builder during that process is like, where are we in our time frame? How are we looking? Are we looking closer to that June date, or are we looking closer to that July date,
Hmm.
of closing? Are there any delays? How's your cabinet people doing? How's your, plumbers doing? Everybody on time? And then, I mean, we'll periodically go look at the house and just kind of, check it out. Buyers are welcome to go look at it on their own, just to see how everything's progressing. So yeah, the process of building is a lot more involved on our end than, if you were buying a resale or if you were buying a new construction home that they've already finished. But then we're scheduling walkthroughs and we're making sure that your money's getting where it needs to go, and coordinating both closings if you've got a property to sell. And so it is very involved, and these are things that we take off your plate as a buyer. If you don't have an agent,
Hmm.
if you didn't have an agent representing you, you would be trying to coordinate and understand all these things. Um,
No thanks.
right. So, and the other part of that too is that a builder's not going to discount his property, his home, if you don't have an agent. It's going to cost you the same amount of money either way.
Right.
If you don't have an agent, that builder just puts that money back in his pocket. So you
Mhm.
just profited the builder more money on that property. So in essence, it's a free cost to you as a buyer to buy new construction and have somebody representing you and taking all of that stuff off your plate.
Yeah.
And it's going to cost you the same amount of money either way. So
Sign me up. I don't want to be in charge of that. That all sounds really stressful.
yeah. But yeah, it's great. And I love the new construction process, having the construction background. I like seeing them built and going through that. And I do think it is, uh, because of the way the market is, that's a great option for people to buy new construction, because we don't have a lot of people that are selling their homes who are stuck in the 2 to 3% interest rates. That sounds terrible, like you're stuck in that interest rate. There are a lot of people that would love to be at that interest rate, but it has kind of handcuffed people to not be able to downsize or move up,
Mhm.
because it's going to cost them way more money either way you go.
I definitely think, I mean, I know that a lot of, agents have some knowledge of the construction process, but I just think it's like so valuable that you really, you know, it's all over my head. But like, if I were buying, I would want somebody that knows all the, you know, stuff that I would not ever need to know. But I just know like sometimes you're talking to people and you'll bring up, I mean, you're talking about being dried in. I didn't know what that was, but um you talk about these words. I can't even think of one like the soffits and I don't know, just
Fascia,
stuff. The what?
fascia.
Yes, stuff like that. Like this is why I have you in my household because I don't have any desire to know all of that stuff, and I don't know where it is in the house or what it does. But I just think that's like super valuable that you know stuff about the construction process because in a resale, like not very many people are going to need to have that knowledge, but definitely in a new construction home, that's like super important.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's important in resales too, but it is neat to go through that construction process and kind of understand what's going on and what's happening. It's always difficult to look at a home that's been framed that doesn't have sheetrock or doesn't have the finishes in there, but you can tell by the way that things are laid out. It's still hard to visualize, but saying like, okay, here's where your kitchen cabinet's going to be, here's where your sink is going to be, here's where your refrigerator and your stove, and hey, here's a chase where they're running your HVAC ductwork or your plumbing pipes that are not going to be accessed. It's basically going to be boxed in, but that's what's behind there.
Mhm.
I had a client that it was nice when they were framing. She took a picture of the framing over the fireplace so that when she went to hang her TV above the fireplace, she knew what was behind there.
Oh, that's
Uh,
smart.
yeah, little stuff like that. Or, there was kind of a dead space, just the way that the property was framed. And it was like, hey, take a picture of that. You may be able to take that sheetrock out and open that up and, make some shelves in there, or,
Mhm.
do something like that. So that was kind of neat to, be able to look at that as it was framed and figure out some things that you could do once all that got covered up.
Yeah, you did that when we were mapping out the basement. Like when we moved here, it was already studded out. So like there's certain spaces that are just like they have to go there. But you had to, and then I looked at you like, what? Because you have this gift. I do not have this gift. This is why we're paired together. But like we'll put the we can put the bathroom here and we can move this here and then we can, you know, the thing with the wires and all the plumbing, whatever, you're like moving it over so that you don't have to, it's like the ceiling can be even except for in this one spot. You know what I'm talking about? Okay. Because I know it's not making sense to anybody but me. But it's just stuff like that where I'm like, what? Yes, because I would never have the forethought to be like, I would just nail it in and cause some damage. And probably, yeah, I have done that.
Can I tell the picture about you hanging pictures with screws?
You're gonna tell the story about me hanging pictures of school. I mean, you already teased it out. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I came home one day and my wife is driving screws into the wall with a hammer to hang pictures on the wall.
I had already done it. I had already done it, and I was very proud of my work. But it was the gallery wall, and I'm an impatient person, so I had to ask you to do it a couple of weeks prior, and you were like, "Okay, yeah," and busy. So I was like, I think I can do this myself, and I did a beautiful job. And you wouldn't have known it was screws until I outed myself. But in our old house, your little shop area was not organized like it is here. So I had to work with what I could find. And it looked awesome.
Yes.
I'm sure it cost you money to repair when we were moving out because there was like 15 or something pictures on the wall with at least two scrolls. Because also, fun fact about me is I don't use a level. Like David loves a level, and I just eyeball it. So if it's a little off, then I'm gonna make some more holes until it's right. Yeah.
Mhm.